We have Doug Zarkin, Chief Brand Officer of the Good Feet Store, and Homer Shoval, VP Healthcare at Placer.ai. You have to get the dot at Placer.ai, or it's just not the same. So, all right, with that, we'll take it away. Thanks, guys.
Perfect. Can you hear me? No. What about now? Oh, perfect. So, a pleasure having a chance to present here with Doug. I have to say that it's my first wellness conference. I'm kind of a tech guy, but I just turned 50. I think when you get close to that age, your body tells you, like, you had a great run, you're on your own. So I'm a big believer in everything that's been discussed and the importance of longevity and living a quality and sustainable life. So excited to have a chance to introduce Placer and Doug here. How about Doug? We'll let a short video do an introduction for you.
Sounds good. The great John Lennon said it best: all you need is love. That's true in your personal life, and actually it's true in business.
Please welcome back the VP of Pearl Vision, Doug Zarkin. How you doing?
Doug Zarkin joins me today. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back. Hi, my name's Doug Zarkin, retail and brand marketing expert and author of my first book, Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone. In my book, I talk about how to really understand the notion of the different customer zones. Being friends with your consumer is great, but we really want to create brand love.
Probably the hardest thing in any business model is quality of care.
The ability to care for people behind the eyes.
And when they can see life in focus, anything's possible.
Right.
We'll explore the depth of understanding how trust is really earned between brands and consumers.
You know, trust is earned in a series of small moments. It's not what the bigger players are doing by giving product away. It's actually about listening.
We'll explore, importantly, about how to build a high-performing team. It's great to lead, but you've got to ensure that people are going to follow. Brands need to go deeper. They need to create passionate, trusted relationships with their consumers. I firmly believe that it's not about a right way or a wrong way. What this book really is designed to do is to help you find your way, to unlocking your brand's power and creating that all-important brand love. I always stress out that am I wearing the same outfit that's in the video, so fortunately I'm not. Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
Very cool. So off the bat, I mean, clearly you're a thought leader in the branding space. There's a lot of momentum and competition. When it comes to brand authenticity, how do you create it? How do you deliver that promise?
Well, we're all sitting here in a world in the health and wellness space where the obligation to be authentic is probably 10x with everybody else. If you're marketing a soft drink or a candy bar, you have a certain threshold of authenticity that you need to manage. But if you are in the health and wellness space, either directly or adjacent, you are looking at a much higher threshold to earn trust. And it really comes down to what is marketing. Marketing is really about positioning, which is really about the art of sacrifice. How do you become an authentic brand? It's trying not to be everything to everybody. It's being something to someone. And that something is really about an organizational commitment to excellence, to really carrying it through from not only what you're doing in a communication perspective, but importantly, what happens after that person buys, after that person trusts you. What does that relationship look like? That actually, at the end, is really where trust is earned.
Super interesting. Also, talk about competition and differentiation, right? Because part of it is just a lot of no's. There's a lot of alternatives. How do you differentiate yourself and create something that relates to people and trust them?
Well, it all kind of comes down to mindset. So a category leader, if you think about it as a race, if you're ahead in the race and it's a long distance race, you're focusing on the person right behind you, right? You're constantly looking over your shoulder. Let's say it's an 800 meter race. You're constantly looking over your shoulder. You're trying to figure out how they're catching up on you. And that happens in the brand world all the time. Who is Pepsi looking at Coke? Who is Coke looking at Pepsi? They should be looking at Dr. Pepper, who all of a sudden jumped in front of them. When you're in second place, who are you looking at? You're looking at the person in front of you. How do I get closer? How can I catch up? How can I get in front? But what is the person in third place trying to figure out? How am I going to possibly win this race? And it's that challenger mindset from really thinking about your business in third place that allows you to usurp the competition. Any brand that comes into an established market or that is building a marketplace has to have a challenger mindset. They're not focusing on number one market share. They're focusing on winning the damn battle for share of mind, share of wallet, share of stomach, depending on whatever category you're in. And it really begins again with the executive team. It has to translate all the way down through, most importantly, to whomever is your frontline associate. And that could be somebody in e-com. That could be somebody in brick and mortar. Those frontline folks are the single most important tool that a marketer has in their toolbox. If they're not drinking the Kool-Aid, for lack of a better term, then you have absolutely no chance of winning.
Very insightful. So let's kind of transition a bit to somewhat the partnership that Placer has with GoodFit. So you said you need to be very diligent. You got to be very minded about your core strengths. So talk about segmentations and understanding who are your target audience.
So as the Chief Brand Officer for GoodFeed Holdings, we actually have 4 business units that fall under GoodFeed worldwide. There's the GoodFeed store, which is our largest, which is premium arch supports. We're about 300 locations around the world. There's Stretched, which is based here in New York, which is a up-and-coming brand focused on premium assisted stretching. Think Stretch Lab, Stretch Zone, but better. We have our ING Source OS First business, which is if you're in the running world or the pickleball world, you know our line of socks. And then we have a business that we recently purchased called Compression Health, which is essentially the Amazon.com for medical grade compression. In every one of those businesses, there is a particular mindset and a particular physical state of being that allows you to qualify. There are certain people that don't need a medical grade compression garment. But if you are postpartum and you had a C-section, for any of the ladies in the room, okay, you know that postpartum you need a compression garment just to help you feel good, to help you not just get your body back, but how to feel good. Medically, you're prescribed. If anybody here ever had ACL, MCL, or Achilles surgery, you may need a medical grade garment. For compression, it's finding people that are in that moment of, I'm going to say trauma, but are at that life stage moment where they may only be in it for 6 to 12 weeks. And then we may never see them again. And so we have to really be diligent about how we go after them. For the GoodFeed store, it's somebody who's in pain and discomfort. Not like occasional pain, but annoying and chronic pain. Whether it's plantar fasciitis, whether it's somebody like me who plays tennis and whose back is crazy after playing for 2 hours. It's finding people in that particular marketplace. And then with the work that we're doing with you, it's where to put up brick and mortar. I mean, how terrible is it to walk around Manhattan or any other big city and see a lot of these businesses that are out of business? Being out of business isn't because you necessarily are running a bad business. I believe the number one challenge that businesses that are in the brick and mortar will have is finding the right retail distribution, finding the right retail outlet. Real estate is the number one decision that should be made, because if you are not top of mind, if you are not in a really good spot, you get what you pay for. There are cheap strip centers all over the world, especially here in New York, but that doesn't necessarily mean better. There's a reason why it's priced that way. So we've got to be looking at anchor tenants. We've got to be looking at flow through traffic. We've got to be looking at the demographics of the market to figure out, is this the right place for another GoodFeed store? Is this the right place for us to expand the Stretch brand business? All of those considerations require data. But I will say this, and this may not make you happy, but data does not make decisions for the modern day brand leader or marketer. We make decisions using data. And here's the reason why. Because data is only as good as the questions that you ask. How do you know what questions to ask? It's not from data. It's from insight. And where does that insight come from? It comes from getting out of the boardroom, get out of your home office, and get out into the field. Work in a store. You guys will laugh. I am one of the few men that you will ever meet that can tell you proudly that he was an Avon lady. I spent 3 years at Avon. I spent my first 6 weeks selling lip gloss door to door because I was brought in to help revolutionize that business. And how could I possibly do it if I didn't understand the culture that was there? I'm an arch support specialist. I was trained. I've actually been trained 3 times by our corporate and 2 of our franchisees because I got to understand what's happening in brick and mortar. And a brand like the one we're here today, if you don't understand the dynamic of what is happening in those 4 walls, that when somebody walks in and goes, I need something for this, and you're not watching the dynamic of how an associate is guiding somebody into the right supplement or vitamin, you're missing the boat. Because we're not making decisions based on Excel charts. We're making decisions based on insights.
And I want to kind of double click a little bit more on your ability to expand. And, obviously we've seen through our partnership that your growth expansion has been kind of a great driver. So maybe you can talk about, as you said, looking at data and applying that in both, identify one specific segment that's very relevant for you guys, and how can you find where those type of people, where do they shop, where do they live, where do they go in your decision-making process?
I mean, I'll talk about one segment that I think is so undervalued and probably overly taken advantage of. Senior citizens. Bring on the seniors. The Good Feet store loves senior citizens. Why? Because father time is unforgiving, okay? The human body naturally starts to degrade, and you're going to experience pain and discomfort. And that's when we can help make a difference in your life. And so for us, as we look at the senior population, we're looking at the demos, we're looking at media, we're looking at everything from household growth to assisted living facilities, senior centers. These are people that we want. And I think unlike any other business that exists today, maybe with the exception of AARP, we're not looking to take advantage of senior citizens in a negative way. Okay, my dad's 82. I'm at the point in my life. Anybody here parenting their parents? Anybody know what that concept means? Okay, marketers suck when it comes to working with senior citizens. They see it as an easy mark. We see it as an obligation. When somebody walks in and they have really bad hip, knee, back, or leg pain, we can change their life. And that's an awesome responsibility. It's an awesome opportunity, but it's an awesome responsibility. And so going back to authentic, you better be really damn good at what you do to earn that trust. Because that is something that, from a karma perspective, if you don't do right by this group, forget the business success, you're just not a good human being. And at the end of the day, part of what I love about being in the health and wellness business when I was at Pearl Vision and now here is that I actually get to do good while doing really good work. And I think for any marketer, being able to combine those is pretty exciting.
I wholeheartedly agree with your point. I spent the last 15 years in the healthcare space. And you can be cynical. There's a lot of issues with that space, but there is an authentic desire to help people, especially the elder population, as you mentioned, and even a trend to meet patients, especially the elder population, closer to the homes, closer to the community centers that they go to. That gives you a better chance to interact with them and deliver value for them. Let's talk a little bit about challenges. You're using data, you're smart, you execute on it, you compete, but it never goes the right way. There's always issues.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about the challenges of marketing.
I hope I'm not making it sound easy, because it is not. That's why people like me and most of you have jobs, is because it is as much art as it is science. I think the first challenge is it is very hard to have a rational conversation with an emotional person, okay? And in businesses like franchising, it is always very emotional. As right it should, because it's their money. It's their family business. And so how do you create that commonality, or as I like to call that, intellectual honesty? That's where we need really good data, not to make the decision for us, but to be able for us to be on the same page. A lot of times you find that people debate the data. One of my team members right now is in Arizona doing a store check because we saw something from a data perspective that just didn't pass the sniff test. And I probably am wrong. I'm sure the data is right. But in the case that I'm not, I want to know. So I think for all of us, we've got to be really concerned with data integrity, not to the 100th percentile, but 80% of the time, if you can get data that's 80% good, you can make decisions. It's really 20% of the time where the data has to be perfect before a decision that can be taken. And I think part of the skill that we all need to get better at, myself included, is figuring out when you're in the 80% world or when you're in the 20% world.
So before we open up for questions, maybe I'll put you on the spot just because I've heard it earlier today when people talked about their career and how it kind of developed. You know, obviously you've been a thought leader, you wrote a book, you've been in different type of brands. What advice can you give people about their advancement?
It's really simple. Stop focusing on the right way and stop worrying about the wrong way. Just choose a way. I think, again, that's part of the beauty about what we do. Marketing is an art and science. There is very seldom a right or a wrong. There is an a. And the reason why is because every business is different. Your business is going to be different than my business. Your market's going to be different than my market. And so if you can appreciate that the ambiguity is liberating, not terrifying, you can actually go from debate, decision to commitment that much faster. It's when you get paralyzed because you're looking for everything to add up, and it very seldom is. 2 + 2 doesn't always equal 4. If you're lucky enough to have 2 variables that add up to 4, fantastic. But part of what makes marketing and branding such an awesome career is that it's figuring out when it doesn't add up, how to make it add up. And that's what I love.
With that, questions?
Hi.
Yes. So you talked about the importance of getting insight into the consumer experience, like what does that look like at an interaction in store? I'm curious to get your thoughts on that feedback loop. So like from that customer store associate to product to marketing, like how do you think about that across the different?
That's a great question. That's such a nice softball question for me. Thank you. So for me, at the core of my book and the core of who I am as a leader, and you can ask Ashley and Jacob, before I hired them, I said, guys, here's the book, read it, still decide if you want to become part of my team. And they did, so maybe the book was good. It's the notion of what I call thinking human. And thinking human is a very simple premise. It's the idea that imagine if every customer that walked into your store or went to your website was your only customer. How would you behave? How would you talk to them? How would you treat them during the purchase experience? How would you treat them post-purchase experience? For me, the feedback loop begins with that premise. It's also appreciating that post-purchase, I spent a month in Japan learning the art of customer service. And in Japan, customer service is not about triage like it is here in the States. It's not a bitching and complaining line where people complain. It's an opportunity for the Japanese business to actually strengthen the bond of trust. They use it as an opportunity to give thanks and to offer even more value. And so it's a mindset shift. Too often do we try to get the problem off our plate so we can move on to other things. To me, if you look at the fact that someone's reached out, create empathy. That doesn't mean admit that you're wrong, because often you're not. I mean, let's face it, the consumer theoretically is always right, but are they? Sometimes you just have a really difficult consumer. But it's appreciating that you now have an opportunity to engage. And being able to turn an adversary into an advocate, if you can do that, it's awesome. But again, it all emanates from this notion of what I call thinking human.
Talk a little bit about what a poor job the senior community receives in marketing, et cetera, and people get it wrong. What marketplace or media group do you think is getting it right?
You know, it's a great question because it's much easier. We talked about it before. I think Mira was one of the comments. We look at competitors and we say all the things they're doing wrong. It's hard to actually focus the mindset shift on who they're doing it right. I actually think the insurance communities are getting better. And I say that dealing with my dad's long-term disability and all the things that go with it. I think the insurance companies are recognizing that people are paying decades into premiums. And when somebody wants to activate a plan, that is not a prohibitive thing. Insurance companies don't necessarily want you to actually cash in on the insurance. to me, what I've seen in the 3 or 4 years that I've been sort of parenting my dad is the companies that I'm working with are getting better at recognizing that this is not a business moment, it's a human moment. And I think brands that can recognize, especially when they're dealing with the older community, that this is not about commerce, okay? It's about humanity. I think the approach changes. I'm seeing at the national level, there's more forgiveness, I think, with some of the credit card companies when a senior misses a credit card payment, especially when you explain to them and you have to send them power of attorney documents. There's not that black and white, well, you're 10 days late or you're 5 days late. I had a situation where I candidly just forgot that one of my dad's credit card doesn't have auto pay. And I got an email, it was in my spam, I was like 20 days late, and they wanted to charge me like $400 on a $1,000 bill. And I called them, and I just, no bullshit, just very honest, and said, here's my situation, I'm happy to send you my power of attorney, but here's what I'm dealing with. And they were like, are you kidding? We got you, don't worry about it. And that, to me, that little moment, did they need my $400? Did that credit card company really need my $400? They didn't. But I'll tell you, of all the other credit cards that I canceled, I'm not canceling that one. Hi.
Fabulous, by the way. But,
Thank you.
You're welcome. In such a socially connected world and driven by influencer and all the things that are reaching like the millennial and Gen Z, now if you're really targeting an older consumer, do you find that to be a challenging environment? And like, what tactics are you using to market to this community? Because it's almost like, does anything exist anymore?
Is that the music that plays me off for my acceptance speech? I want to thank my parents, my agent. That's all good. It's your house. It's all fine. Okay, the question. Older consumers. Yeah, really hard. So fortunately, and I won't use the M word, Facebook has gotten older. So for us, it's an opportunity. But Facebook, is anybody here from Meta? They're not easy to deal with. All right. I'm tired of hearing about the algorithm and that my creative isn't good. Like, it's a crock of shit. There's something broken there. The answer is yeah, because even though the older consumer is still spending time online, they're still predominantly doing things like linear. And so for us, we have to try to temper how much money we're putting into linear TV. But at the same time, we just need to make sure that our creative is doing a better job. More and more we're finding with seniors is word of mouth. They may not have Facebook communities, but they actually use this thing that my daughter doesn't understand, that her iPhone actually allows you to talk to people, like in real life. She's 17 and has no verbal skills. I don't know how she's getting into college. She can type like a champ, okay? 80 words a minute texting. But when I look at her phone bill, she has like 4 minutes of phone calls a month. But the senior community is a lot more connected than it's ever been. But I think actually, mentioned before, I think with the older senior community, you're dealing with all the Gen Xers like myself that are now entering that parenting portal, and we're highly connected. So it's almost like the parent-child strategy. Do you get the child, in this case, to get the parent, versus the way it used to be when I was in the world of serial marketing, where you got the parent to get the child? It's not easy. And it's, unfortunately, for us, something that we struggle with every single day. We're good at it, we're not great. We got to get better.
And I would add, just coming from the healthcare space, I completely agree. For the super old population, the caregivers are the ones that are connected, and you can target them. And for those who are just becoming Medicare patients, 65, actually a lot of them have social media.
Yeah.
They're kind of more familiar, and you have a chance to engage with them, and over time that's just going to get easier. Any other questions?
Quick one. You said, your customer may only be your customer for like 6 weeks or however long they need and I'm thinking about my son who's an athlete, he's worn orthotics and it's been great, but he's done.
Right.
So is it the HCPs? Is that who you're really going after, or is it a mix of the consumer, the patient and the HCPs?
So our supports are not accepted by insurance. So we're really going after, we're HSA, FSA in the case of Good Feet. We're really going after the person that's in pain. And so for us, it's more of a lifestyle play. Like your son, he is absolutely part of our audience, but he's more of the minority. Like I'm flat-footed and I've worn our sports my entire life. But what we're really seeing is that person who's in a job that they're on their feet every single day. We've all been to a conference. Does anybody's feet feel good after walking a conference floor? Like Javits, the LA like nobody has invented a conference floor where you actually feel good after walking it. For us, it's somebody like that, but it's also somebody who's in food service, as an example. Teachers, nurses, we did this huge initiative for Nurses Appreciation Week this week. They're on their feet, I think, an average of like 12 hours a day on a 14-hour shift. And so for us, it's really about helping you, being able to connect with them on a lifestyle perspective. For you, performance may be being able to walk 18 holes with your friend. It may be being able to play with your grandkids, or it may be able to get out of bed and not having plantar fasciitis. Whatever that is, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to really evolve our marketing to be much more of an emotional-led, lifestyle-driven platform, because I firmly believe, and I talk about this in the book, shameless plug, is that consumers make emotional decisions before they make rational choices. You like, you love, and then explain why. I had such a great trip because the hotel was great. Well, why was the hotel great? Well, I had great service and the bed sheets and blah, blah, blah. We are emotional beings, and when we try to talk to consumers too much on a rational level, to me, we lose the special sauce that makes what we do pretty damn special.
I'd say a round of applause for that.
Great, thank you guys.